Hello and welcome to Sunrise Cardcast, your one-stop podcast shop for all things hockey cards. My name is Eric Andrews, also known throughout the hobby as Hammerhawks, and I'm joined by my co-host and fellow hobbyist Aaron Goldstein, better known as Crease Collector. So, starting off the episode, Aaron has some extremely exciting news in relation to his Jonas Enroth collection. So, Aaron, why don't you tell us all about this exciting news?
Definitely. So in case you haven't seen it, I would really encourage you guys to watch episode 6. So if you haven't seen that episode yet, if you are like a new listener, I would encourage you to pause this video and go back to episode 6, just so you can see us talk about what we like to call the white whales in the hobby. And it's those cards that you might have even questioned the existence of at some point. It's those kind of cards that you have not seen and you'd really like to acquire for your collection. And this past week, I actually did that with a little bit of a twist. A couple weeks ago, I saw an auction that made my jaw pretty much hit the floor. It was an auction for a card that might surprise people. It was the 0910 Upper Deck Fleer Ultra Ice Medallion Rookies, number to 25. And the card itself is pretty rare, but the number out of 25 might not shock people too much. But the thing with this card, and you'll know if you listen to episode 6, is that I had not seen a copy of this card ever. I've seen one listing for sale in 2011, and after that, that's been it. I haven't heard of a copy since. And so a couple weeks ago, I saw a listing for a card, and yeah, it was the one. And so I luckily was the high bidder, and it came through, and the cards were delivered this week. And I say cards plural because I actually acquired not one, but 21 of the 25 in a single auction. And that's not a voice typo. That's real. It was actually 21 of the 25. So pretty much the complete run of Ice Medallion rookies for Jonas Enroth, and just blown away. First off, it made me realize why I hadn't seen a single copy in all these years, because some guy had all of them pretty much. So it pretty much made this card have a print run of 4 in a way, because 21 of them were holed up somewhere, and then only 4 of them were kind of loose on the open market, it seems like. And yeah, it didn't really make me question it. I mean, it did, but I was just so focused on winning it that that's the most thing I was focused on. So I did win it, and of course they were delivered this week. And so yeah, super excited to have that. It's probably one of my most wanted cards ever. And so I'm super glad to have that. Yeah, I mean, it's not autographed. It doesn't have some fancy patch, but it kind of brings me back to like the roots of collecting, and that it's just a nice card. It happens to be a rookie year. And so that's really cool. So I'm really glad to have that. There's actually a couple of theories about why this card is so rare and that I haven't seen one in so long. Is a couple of theories that I have, and it's not common, but it does happen. So for these cards, for the 0910 Fleer Ultra product, a lot of the rookies were, like always, packed out in the product, and there was 20 players that were not. The Tavares, Gustafsons, Carlson that year, and they were left as redemptions because they hadn't made their debut yet. So of course, their redemptions were inserted in the packs, and the regular rookies were, and the parallels were inserted inside. And so what I think happened with these ones, one of my theories is that for these cards at Upper Deck, there was an error. And so these Enroth cards were actually held back by mistake, thinking that his redemptions were in the product. And then once the product went live, Upper Deck must have realized, okay, no one is redeeming these cards. And so there must be something wrong, because otherwise, we would have seen it by now. And then eventually, as the product ended and moved on, they realized that no product had a redemption, and these should have been inserted in the first place, along with the other rookie cards in the product that were inserted in the packs. So over the years, and it doesn't happen often, but it has happened that these cards were given out to collectors through either redemption replacements or maybe damaged cards that they kind of just gave it in as like a top up. So again, it's not really common, but it has happened in the past. And so it was kind of Upper Deck's way of kind of like making it right to the collector and kind of distributing them in bulk, and so that they would be distributed on the secondary market and make it out to collectors. So that was one of my theories for these cards. Another one is that they were actually maybe deliberately or accidentally taken by an Upper Deck employee. And again, it rarely happens because obviously you don't like to see this stuff, but it is possible that a lot of these Ice Medallion rookies, and it wasn't just Enroth, there was a couple other players that their Ice Medallions were basically non-existent. That an employee took boxes of these rare parallels and kept them over the years for whatever reason. Maybe they had plans to, give them to collectors, but it just never happened. And then years later, we see on eBay a bulk seller selling literally hundreds of these Ice Medallion parallels just in bulk, per player, like maybe 18, 19, or 20 copies of a particular player, just big bulk lots of like 30, 40 cards. And just really confusing. And so you kind of have to put the pieces together on how these cards came to be. And also the quality of the cards. I mean, if you look at every single card that I got, all of them are, mint condition. There might be some differences with the centering and things like that. But as far as like the corners and the edges and things like that, things just look perfect. And you're not going to get that on 21 straight cards if they were all inserted in packs like they usually are. So that's another kind of tell that, they all came in bulk and they're all pretty much the exact same condition. Like that stuff just never happens unless they were printed and just held back, and then they were just sitting in the warehouse somewhere. So yeah, really confusing, but it's kind of a relief knowing that they do exist, because I know a lot of collectors over the years have pretty much said that these Ice Medallions from 2010 straight up don't exist because they haven't seen one of their particular players. So really kind of weird, but it's a thing that has happened before, especially around that time period. Upper Deck did give out some promotional sets to collectors randomly. They gave out for the Young Guns that year, they gave out these high gloss proofs that they would just give a collector a complete set of the Young Guns proofs or the base variation high gloss as well. So just a bunch of weird stuff that went on in the hobby at that time that caused some of these cards to be essentially lost for 10, 11 years now. And thankfully they made their way home. So yeah, long story short, super excited to have the card. And before I start rambling on here further, if you haven't found that kind of white whale that you were looking for, or you might even question the existence of it, definitely keep looking, because you really, especially in this case, you never know when you're going to acquire that card or what the backstory might be behind it. As you can see with this one, a collector might have got a bunch of them, or maybe even an employee. So definitely not pack inserted, but cool card nonetheless.
Yeah, it's such an interesting story. I mean, like you said, you occasionally will hear about something like this having happened, but it's very few and far between, especially at this point in time in the hobby. Like you said, 10, 12 years ago, things like this did happen every now and again, and to have, this story kind of pop up all of these years later is, pretty interesting in my opinion. And like you said, it wasn't just Enroth, it was a few other players. I know Antti Niemi was in there, and Ville Leno, and there were a few other guys as well. Actually, quite a few other guys, because like you said, that seller had made a number of listings of just bulk Ice Medallion lots that were pretty much the same players every single time. And in each listing, there would be 2, 3, 4 of the same guy, and he would do that same listing, whatever, 6, 7 times. So like you said, for some of the reasons that you said, it's pretty clear that those cards probably did come straight from Upper Deck in one way or another. And I guess another potential explanation is maybe during the printing of those cards initially, something happened to them and they had to
Good
be
point.
reprinted right before release, and they didn't have time to put them into the product. So then rather than, at that point, what do you do with them? So, maybe at that point they just said, well, let's just get them out there somehow so that they're out there like they should be. So I don't think there's really any way of truly knowing what the answer to the mystery is. But yeah, it's a very intriguing story, no matter what that answer is. And of course, I knew, that this was probably your biggest Enroth want, all these years later.
Probably. Not based on print run. I mean, again, it's out of 25, but definitely one that had the most buzz around it, I think. I've seen a bunch of collectors over the years. I even saw an old thread on a forum from like 10 years ago, saying like, where are these cards? And they were looking for, I forget who they were looking for, but a bunch of other collectors piped up in the thread saying, yeah, like a couple players weren't printed or something like that. So, but obviously they were, and I never doubted it. It's just about finding it that was the problem. So yeah, really glad to have it. And that's a good point about the printing process. And then there might have been something wrong with it. And then these cards were printed and yeah, had to get them out somehow. So that's another good theory too.
Yeah, so, obviously knowing that this was a huge card that you've been looking for literally over 10 years, to finally not even just find one, but, find something like this is just unbelievable. And, obviously you made a pretty aggressive play to make sure that you got them. It didn't come to that, it didn't go all the way up to your max bid, of course, thankfully. But no matter what would have happened, you were probably going to get those cards no matter what, which is great. And, another thing that kind of came to my mind when I first heard about it, and then also once you got them in hand earlier this week, was the LeBron James press conference when he went to the Miami Heat, talking about how many championships he's going to win. Not one, not two, not three, not four, not five, not
That's
six,
awesome.
not seven. Well, here's Aaron with 21
I
Jonas
should post that up.
cards.
I'm going to post that up on Twitter or something. That's awesome. That's awesome.
So pretty cool story. I've certainly never had an experience like that in my time collecting, and I mean, most people haven't. So
no, it's rare.
Yeah,
like I've seen people collect, try and go for the complete run of like 5 copies or 10 or something, but to find almost 25 is just, for me, unheard of. I haven't seen that done ever. So yeah, I mean, hopefully I'm able to do it, but I was originally thinking of keeping one for my collection and then selling off the rest, but a couple people were like, no, if you get 21 of the 25, like, no, hold on to them and see if you can complete the run, because that's just something that you don't see ever. And if you were a collector of an actual pack inserted card, just collecting 20 of the 25 would be a tough task, let alone over that in a single listing is just insane.
Another, factor of that too, what you paid for the entire lot of 21. I think if someone, a year ago, or, heck, even a month or two ago, said, hey, I have one Jonas Enroth Ultra Ice medallion out of 25 for the price that you paid for all of them, I think you probably would have bought it.
Oh, definitely. I paid about $40 for that, maybe like 41, 42. I forget what my final bid was, but yeah, for the entire lot of 21 cards, which came out to something like stupid, like like $2 a card or something, yeah. Like a little bit less or something like that. So again, if I wanted to, I could sell off each one, keep one, and make a very tidy profit, but I'm not going to do that now. I'm just going to keep them, and hopefully I can complete the run, which is something I've never even come close to. I'm normally not a collector of duplicates, although I do have a lot in my collection, which kind of contradict myself there. But those duplicates are ones that, like if you want to create a nameplate, technically you do have a duplicate of that card, but it is different in a certain way. Or people have given me jersey numbered cards, which I didn't really need, but it's one that I'll add because it's sort of significant in a way. And all the other duplicates in my collection have just been given me for free. So it's pretty fortunate that, people are kind of looking out for you that way, which is cool. So yeah, we'll see where this leads, but I'm super stoked.
Yeah. So you've got relatively very little money into the quantity of them that you have. So why not just hang on to them and enjoy them? And somehow, if you can somehow find one more, two more, three more, or even all four more, I mean, that would just be amazing. So
I think 3 more would be torture, because then you're looking for that one more. So it's either all or nothing. So I would like to find the other 4, but who knows at this point. This is the first time actually seeing it in 11 years, in 10, 11 years, which is crazy, because I like the only proof of one selling was back in 2011, and there's no picture with that listing. So it's my first time seeing it. So unreal. Now I know why.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing I just wanted to mention too, someone collecting an entire print run. I think I've seen it done with up to 10. I don't know that I've seen it done higher than that. I do have a friend, and we actually posted a picture of this earlier this month, and he's a premier mega patch collector. and he recently completed a Florida Panthers logo. And, while he was able to complete the logo, they were made out of two players. That said, 20 of the 22 are of Evgeny Dadonov. So, I mean, he's two away from completing the entire Dadonov logo on itself, which is just, it's crazy. I mean, as someone that has collected mega patches since Jalmerson had one last year, or I guess 2 years ago at this point, knowing how hard that is to just even find or see that many of one card, it just doesn't happen. So, the fact that you have seen and now own 21 of 25 of something is just crazy, and not that you were necessarily ever intending to do that. That's just how it happened. But yeah, it's very unique and definitely not something that you see every day.
Definitely not. I actually asked the seller because he's a huge buyer and seller of cards. This guy had like over 200,000 feedback on eBay, just a crazy power seller. I even asked him like, hey, what's the backstory on these cards? Because he had literally like hundreds of these 0910 Ice Medallion rookie cards, like just crazy. And so he buys and sells so much cards that he wasn't too knowledgeable on the exact origin of these cards or who exactly he got it from. Maybe he works with more than one people who help in bringing cards. I'm not really sure. So the origins of who had these first is unknown, but I suspect either a collector who got extremely lucky or maybe an employee, but I guess we'll never know. And I guess the mystery behind it for me makes it that much more cooler. Like, I'm not sure if I want to know the exact story behind it, It's like, oh, like that's why. But like just the mystery behind it makes, these cards so much cooler. And I actually spoke to another Enroth collector or a former Enroth collector 2 days ago and actually just messaged him quickly and showed him the cards and said, hey man, here's the card that you were once looking for as well. I just thought it'd be nice if you can see it, for once, because I know you were on the hunt for that card as well. And yes, they do exist. And he responded back thinking like, oh man, like I remember killing myself over that card years ago. Like I had no idea it existed. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And I told him the whole backstory. And he said, yeah, they were probably backdoored, I guess, from the sounds of it. But who knows? And he loved seeing it. So I'm glad I can help share that with a former Enroth collector. So very cool. So I just wanted to share that with you guys if you haven't seen it on the forums or on my Instagram already. So yeah, cool story and one that will definitely never happen again. So definitely a once in a lifetime pickup for 21 white whales. Crazy. And speaking of one of a kind, there's big news lately with PSA and that they bought a company called Genamint. And I'm going to let Eric speak on this a little bit more. But yeah, some big news in the hobby for all your pop ones.
Yes. So earlier this week on Wednesday, April 21st, PSA announced that it had acquired Genamint Incorporated, which for those who aren't familiar with that, I wasn't familiar with it. I don't think Aaron was either.
Me neither.
So
No way.
yeah, no one had really heard of this company before. But so to explain what it is, it's a software company that they focused on using next generation technology specifically to help with the grading process. So PSA decided to buy out this company and integrate it into what they do. And also part of the deal, which is kind of, I find it really interesting, that it was all just kind of packaged into the deal, is PSA actually hired the founder of Genamint, who is Kevin Lenane, to be PSA's new VP of product management. So it's kind of interesting. Not only did they buy, his company, but they also just said, hey, come be our VP of product management too,
That's awesome.
while you're at it. So pretty cool, how that kind of all came to be. And I just wanted to read the release in its entirety for you guys, just in case you have not heard it. It's not super long, but obviously there's a lot of information packed into it, and we'll go through it a little bit more in detail afterward. But I just wanted to read it word for word so you guys can hear it straight from the source. So, Professional Sports Authenticator, PSA, has announced that it has acquired Genamint Incorporated, a software company that will help improve and scale the process by which PSA handles trading card submissions. Genamint technology analyzes each trading card in real time and is able to provide diagnostics, measurements, and detect alterations or other changes made to a card surface in order to assist human graders. It will also provide unique card identification or card fingerprinting by identifying the exact card in order to track provenance, resubmissions, condition changes, and other attributes over time. Acquiring and integrating Genamint will allow us to grade more trading cards faster while improving accuracy, said Nat Turner, executive chairman of Collectors Universe, which is PSA's parent company. The reputation PSA has established as the industry's card grading authority is important to protect and enhance. This acquisition is one of the first steps toward furthering PSA's capabilities as the foremost authority in grading trading cards. We're not eliminating humans from the grading process, he continued. We're improving the process by adding technology. Kevin Linnane is the founder of Genamint and the new VP of Product Management at PSA. He and the broader Genamint technology and operations team will be joining forces with PSA effective immediately. Kevin brings key experience to Collectors Universe as the former CEO and founder of Venome, which was a market leader in the machine vision field. Venome was acquired in 2015 by Integral Ad Science. I'm excited to start working with the team at PSA, Linnane said. We expect to significantly enhance PSA's capacity by implementing our technology and taking PSA's grading process to the next level through our unique capabilities, including card diagnostics. Over the past 14 months, PSA has experienced an unprecedented surge in card submissions and demand for its services. To help facilitate the record number of submissions, PSA has made hundreds of new hires and more than tripled its operational footprint. Beyond the acquisition of Genamint, the company plans on making additional significant investments in technology and operational capacity. So that's the release from PSA. You can read it on their website. Obviously, like I said, there's a lot packed into that release. So I just wanted to highlight a few things. First, about Genamint, and their technology. Of course, it analyzes cards in real time. So I'm not exactly sure how that works. My understanding, or how I think it kind of works, is they scan it using some type of device that they have, and it analyzes the card, and it provides diagnostics and measurements in a matter of seconds. And there's actually kind of like a trailer about how Genamint works that I think they put together maybe a year or two ago, or whenever they started the company initially, that kind of shows the software process. And from the previews and examples that they gave, it takes about 9 or 10 seconds for the program to analyze the card. And what it does is it rates the surface, edges, corners, and centering, which we're all familiar with that with card grading. But one thing that kind of stood out to me is it also rates the eye appeal of a card, which, especially when it comes to vintage cards and lower grade copies of cards, that makes a huge difference in the value. So I thought that was really interesting. And then all of those things combine to determine an overall grade. And each of those factors goes down to 1/10 of a point, which I also thought was really interesting. So you might see, the centering is a 9.2, and the corners are an 8.7, and the edges are a 9.4, and the overall grade is an 8.9, or whatever it might be. So I just thought that was also pretty interesting as far as how it actually analyzes the card and breaks everything down. And I believe that even just from that initial scanning of it and the analyzing of it, that it also detects what the card actually is. So it figures out what set it's from, the year, the player, all of that stuff. So that's another pretty cool technology piece right there, that I'm sure that in and of itself will probably help save some time a little bit with the grading. People won't have to be reading submission sheets and confirming that, yes, this is what it says it is. They just immediately, bam, there it is on the program. So that's pretty cool, I think, as well. It doesn't seem super obvious, like, oh, that's a big deal, but I just thought that was really interesting. And another thing with it is it detects alterations to the surface of a card. And, again, this is really kind of focusing more on those vintage cards. But if someone, might have tried to alter a card, by recoloring part of it, or, just touching up a scratch, or whatever it might be, it's going to detect that alteration. And it might seem like that something like that might be obvious, but there are cases with vintage cards where it's really hard to tell if the surface of a card has been touched up or altered or whatever it might be. So having a computer software that can track pretty much any alteration to a card is definitely a game-changing technology for sure. And again, that's primarily going to focus more on those vintage cards. But yeah, definitely really cool there. Another thing that really stood out to me too is this card fingerprinting technology that they're calling it. I'm not really sure how that is possible. I mean, especially with modern cards, it seems like, the card stock is the same, and there's so many things about a card. If you had, one card and then stuck it in a stack of 100, mixed them all up and tried to find that exact card again, I mean, that would be, I don't think anybody could do that if it was, obviously an unnumbered card. So that, really was interesting to me, being able to identify an exact copy of a card in order to track the provenance, any resubmissions, any condition changes, potential alterations, things like that. I just found that aspect of it fascinating, and I'm really interested to see how that works. And I hope that PSA kind of does like an informational video or even just another press release explaining how this technology works. Obviously not tipping their hand of, logistically how to make it happen to track that stuff, but just explaining how the technology works, I think would be really interesting to hear. Of course, another big thing is this technology will allow PSA to grade more cards faster while improving the accuracy of the grade and the authenticity of it as well. And, I'm sure you guys heard it in the release, but it's important to note that it is not eliminating or replacing human graders. It's just an added thing to help with the process. So humans are still going to be the ones assigning the grades and reviewing the cards and stuff. This tool is just there to assist with that and to help speed it up. So that's a little bit about the technology as a whole. And then you guys might have noticed at the very end of the release, there were a couple little notes there too. PSA noted with the obvious surge in submissions over the last 14 months that they have made hundreds of new hires and have more than tripled its operational footprint, which is cool to hear, but also interesting given that recently they also stopped all of their grading submissions other than the most premium service. So even all of that effort really wasn't enough to help getting caught up on all the submissions that they have. And then finally, Genamint is the first significant step in investing into technology for the grading process, which I think is really exciting to hear that, because obviously something like this is a huge step in itself. So the fact that this is just the first step, it makes me really interested to hear, okay, well, what else are you going to be doing? Because this is pretty innovative and game changing, really. You guys might be familiar with HGA, which is a pretty new grading company, and I think they have similar technology as this. But this general idea, this technology for grading is really a pretty new concept. So the fact that PSA is already actively pursuing it and going to be implementing it, and then saying that's just the first step, is really interesting. And I'm excited to hear what else they have in store. So yeah, I mean, I think I've kind of shared some of my thoughts throughout that analysis. Aaron, is there anything that stands out to you or that you would want to say about this news?
It's great. I mean, the first time I heard the news, I was like, oh man, it's about time, right? Technology coming to grading. Like that's what people have been calling on for years. One of the things is though, I mean, I guess with the new technology, you can only do this once if you're, brave enough. But I could see a lot of people cracking open those slabs and hoping for, like if they got a 9 or even like an 8 or something, resubmitting it and seeing really where their card stands. But although that does come with a risk, because of course, if you grade your card with this new technology, which is, I think, better than the human eye, although you can't fully replace that, of course, but I think a couple cards out there, especially over the years, kicking around inside of a slab, could potentially grade lower than you think. I'm not sure if PSA will knowingly do that. Like if you send them a slab to have a do-over, I'm not sure if they would kind of want to, put down their earlier work and kind of regrade it. We'll see how that shakes up, but who knows what's going to happen there. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how the hobby community receives this. I've heard nothing but positives. I mean, I think a lot of people can agree that grading is very subjective. We've seen grading come back, on some cards, and there's been some questions, to say the least. You saw with our episode last week, there was definitely some questions with some of the cards that Eric got back. And so this new technology would kind of be, I think, a huge step forward for the hobby and a huge step forward, obviously, in grading. If you can send in a card and then knowing that it passed this, technology test and it passed the human eye test, assuming they have some sort of collaboration with both, that your card is truly, a perfect card. I mean, we can't really say that in quotations anymore because you could potentially have, by the parameters that they set about what this card is and what makes it perfect, as far as like the centering and things like that for that specific card. And then essentially, get a perfect card, and it won't be subjective anymore. It'll be, a technology fact-based finding, and that is huge. And I can only imagine, maybe not at first, but I can only imagine once this thing really picks up steam, and especially the newer generation of collectors, the newer people getting into the hobby now, who can really embrace grading head on, knowing that there isn't some subjectivity to it that could go one way or the other, knowing that there is, like I said, a technology base to it. So they can really put that money into grading, whereas before they might have been on the sidelines. I talked to one collector this week who said exactly that. He wasn't new in the hobby, but he's been kind of on the fence with grading in his collection or sending cards in. But he said, oh, great, if technology's in, then I'm in. So I think this will pump up the grading card market even more. That's even possible. And of course, that obviously aligns with the health of the hobby and where it's at once this thing really takes off. As far as when it's taking off, we're still waiting to see. Is it going to be immediate? Is it going to be, in a year from now when things really are tested and things like that? Who knows? But once it really, picks up steam and people start, submitting their cards, it's going to be awesome to see these grades come back. It's going to be really, really cool. So, we'll see what happens. And it's going to be good also, you mentioned before, but cutting down on the amount of cards being submitted and how PSA is able to deal with that. I could see this being maybe not a premium service, but a service available to all cards. But I could see if you're trying to grade a base card or something, this base card would go through that technology very, very quickly and be sent back. Whereas those vintage cards, I think, might need a little bit more eyes on it after going through that, that process with all the technology. But as far as base cards and maybe lower tiered cards might not get that second look. And so it'll speed up the process of what the graders are doing every day. And I think that's a win for grading and the timelines and things like that. Whereas if you had a high value card or a vintage card or something like that, or a high value vintage card that you really want graded, you can send that in. It'll go through the technology portion. It'll pass that test. And then you'll get the expert, the grader to really look at it again, especially at first. I don't see it being a speedy process at first, because obviously they need to test this and figure out if it does work like they want it to. And when customers do start sending in their cards, you would still want a second, third look at the card and look at the label and look at, is this machine telling me it's the card it's supposed to be? So you still need that approval process. And of course, there's still quality control and things like that, and mistakes that will happen. It's not going to be perfect. But once, they work out the kinks there, it's going to be awesome. And I can't wait. So really exciting news. It kind of came out of nowhere. The grading process has been kind of logjam for a bit, but and so obviously PSA is reaping the rewards of that, as far as their premium service being the only ones you can use right now. And just seeing this acquisition just come to light out of nowhere, it was awesome. And so again, they're slammed right now. I'm not sure when this is going to be implemented, but when it is, it's going to be awesome. And I can't wait. So I think this will be great for the grading community right now. And I think great for the future. And if there's anyone who has a problem with technology entering in with grading, I think it's here to stay. And I could definitely see Beckett getting on board with this with another company or something like that. I definitely see all grading companies, new and old, coming on board with this type of technology. And it's amazing. It's unreal. Game changer for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It almost kind of forces Beckett to do it.
Pretty much. If you don't, there was a thread a couple months ago, and myself and other people were saying the same thing. Like, the first company to get technology involved, it forces the hand of the other one. There was some debate over if companies would go the technology route because it kind of undermines by default their previous work. But I think for the future, I think you have to. And I think they know that. And that's why this acquisition came pretty quickly. So again, Eric, if you're Beckett, pretty much forces you, because if not, you get left in the dust. So PSA right now is number one for me, obviously. And the technology definitely helps their case.
Yeah, and one other thing I wanted to mention with this too, it wasn't mentioned as part of the release, which is, one when you hear it, you'll understand why. I read a news article about this story from another source, and they were saying that apparently Genamint had been trying to raise funding, kind of doing like a capital campaign to help build itself up. And, I'm assuming that that means that they were probably going to be a grading company on their own. And, it makes me wonder, did PSA, really research this and feel threatened almost? Like if we don't buy them out, they're gonna be a legitimate competitor with us. So, I think that's just kind of a little interesting side note there. Who knows if that ever would have happened, since PSA bought them out. But seen that earlier today, so figured I would touch on that.
No, it's a good point. It's a good point. And yeah, I mean, especially with grading, and people have been calling for this for quite some time. And yeah, I'm so glad that they stepped up, and it's going to be really, really cool to see. And I don't think it will, but I don't think if there's going to be any added certification or any added visible difference as far as like the slabs go. Like, this has been graded, with this certain technology to guarantee its authenticity and back this grade, right? I'm not sure if there'll be any visible difference, but definitely behind the scenes, their grading process is going to look a lot different. And again, I'm still glad to see the human element, especially at first, because there is going to be things that need to be worked out, and people who know cards are going to have to oversee this and to make sure that it's reading the cards correctly. And yeah, it's going to be a really cool hybrid approach with grading, the technology component for speed, but also that card expert opinions that you desperately need, especially with our beloved cards. So yeah, it's going to be great to see. So that pretty much does it for this episode. For next episode, and this is part of the reason why our timing for last episode was a little bit pushed, but because we had a plan to get Chris Carlin on from Upper Deck. And so we are in the works of getting a box of Upper Deck Series 2. So that's why we've been kind of holding off on our Series 2 talk, just because we are going to get a box in, and we're going to, hopefully do it live on the show with Chris, and we're going to see what we get, and we're going to rip open some sweet packs, or at least Eric will. It's going to be good. And so we're going to probably have some sweet stuff to give away, unless we hit garbage or something, but we'll see what happens. But that's why our Series 2 has taken so long. But hopefully we get that box soon. We have it in time for next episode. We might be doing another live episode. We're going to see what happens with that. But that's why our Series 2 episode has been taking so long. So hopefully we have some good stuff in hand soon. And so yeah, we'll keep you guys posted on that on our social media feeds.
That should be a lot of fun. Like you said, we've been looking forward to it for a while and have been talking to Chris for a while. Originally, we thought it was going to happen for the last episode, a couple of weeks ago, but then Upper Deck had some kind of unfortunate issues with one of their facilities out in California happen, and people were working from home for a couple of weeks. So Chris just literally couldn't get the product sent out. But the box is en route currently and should be coming next week. So hopefully, maybe it'll be middle or toward the end of next week, which I guess by the time this is coming out, I guess I should say this coming week. So yeah, just stay tuned to our social media. We'll try to keep you guys updated, with as much heads up as possible, just so you guys can be planning on that, because it probably will be a live episode like how we did for the In the Game Used case break. Just having a box break that takes that long is just easier to do it live rather than trying to edit well over an hour of audio. So stay tuned for that. And like Aaron said, no matter what we get, we will be giving away some of the cards. We'll do some kind of a contest to get some of those cards into your guys' hands so you can enjoy them. Obviously, Chris was extremely gracious, to send us a box for free, and we certainly don't take that for granted, and we don't want to, just capitalize on that and just sell the box or sell everything from the box, or even just keep everything from the box. If he's giving us this box for free, we want to spread the love and let you guys enjoy it as well. So yeah, stay tuned for that. We're really excited and looking forward to that episode. So we will keep you guys updated on that as best as we possibly can. But that should do it for episode 32. Please be sure to follow us on social media. We can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Center Ice Cardcast, and on Twitter at Center Ice CC. Please also be sure to subscribe to the show on your podcast platform of choice to make sure you never miss a future episode. Until next time on Center Ice Cardcast, keep collecting those hockey cards.